my name is Gina Perkins, and I'm the Assistant Director with Eastern Oregon University Small Business Development Center. And we're very pleased that Irene Gonzalez from the Small Business Administration will be talking to us today about the Restaurant Revitalization funding program. And I see that Irene is on. So Irene, I'm going to turn it over to you. There we go. She's joining. Hi, Irene. Oh, she's connecting to audio. Good morning, Irene. Hi. I just introduced myself and welcomed everyone, and had neglected to hit admit for you. So
it's like, I'm just hanging out. It's okay.
Sorry about that. So everyone, this is Irene Gonzalez with the Small Business Administration, and I will turn it over to her.
All tech land things.
Okay. Let me go ahead and get my screen shared. Okay, are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay. So what I think will work best, are you able to facilitate the chat for me?
Yes.
Awesome. And so what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and start presenting and talking and everything, and we'll just have, if you've got questions, please post them in the chat. And then I can address them either if it's something we can attend to at that time, or I can definitely get to them at the end. If something is going to take a little bit longer because maybe it's more detailed, then I will give you some resources and then talk you through where to access that information, and then how would be the best way to answer that for you. Alrighty. Okay. So our topic for today is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And what is this? So this is part of the American Rescue Plan Act that became law this year, March 11. And it is specifically for restaurants and food and beverage establishments. And so we've got 28.6 billion in this fund, and SBA will be authorizing the funds to businesses until the appropriations have been expended. So you definitely want, it is on a first come first serve, but you definitely want to make sure that you get your application and all the documentation in, and that will make it a whole lot easier for the processing to run smoothly. And I'll be sharing what all that will entail. And the nice thing is that these funds, they are used for eligible uses, and you have until March 11 of 2023 to use them, which is very nice. Okay, so fun stuff is, who can apply? Restaurants, food stands, food trucks, food carts, caterers, bars, saloons, lounges, taverns, ice cream shops, coffee shops, bakeries. Now you'll see there's some on here that have asterisks. These are businesses that will need to provide documentation that they provide at least 33% of their gross receipts to online sales to the public. So they can't be that you make it on site and then you send it to a distributor, or you make it on site and you send it elsewhere. This is, you have to have on-site sales to the public. Okay, so how much could a business be eligible for? Now, realistically, it is based on your financial statements. So these numbers are from like very bottom to the cap. So a business could receive funding up to 5 million per location, not to exceed 10 million with any affiliated businesses. So that's the max. And if you have a funded award that is below $1,000, then that would deem you as not eligible. Alrighty, so what entities are not eligible to apply? If the entity is a state or local government owned business, and as of March 13 of 2020, owns or operates with any affiliated businesses more than 20 locations. So if it's a franchise or an individual, you can't have more than 20 locations. It'll only go up to 20. Now the shuttered venues, the portal just opened up Monday, but if you have a pending application, then you would not be eligible. So you can't apply you cannot apply for both programs. If the entity is a publicly traded company, if the entity is closed, and I'll explain what closed means in a couple slides. If you are a nonprofit, not eligible. And then again, if your funding is below $1,000, you would not be eligible. Okay, a little bit about franchises. So any business that has a franchise and it meets all the other requirements for eligibility, and it must be listed on the SBA franchise directory. So in the application portal, you will be able to look up the entity on the franchise directory if you aren't sure if it's there. If you happen to have a franchise that's not listed on the directory, it actually, so including brands that have previously been denied, then the franchisor can submit those disclosure documents so that it can be added, and then SBA can take a look at that. All right. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a question. Is it
Okay.
all right if I ask at this point?
Absolutely.
It says if an individual has more than 20 businesses, but only 2 restaurants, do they qualify?
Okay. So they're actually, some of these may require extra response. And honestly, and I'm going to put it in the chat, there is a program guide, and there's also what we call Restaurant Revitalization Fund Knowledge Base. Basically, they're FAQs. And this is really what we go to. And I encourage every business to go onto our website, and I'll put that in the chat, and look at 3 things: the sample application, the program guide, and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund Knowledge Base. It's the FAQs. And they will answer, I guarantee, I would say 98% of your questions if you have unique questions, because I've gone through this almost daily, and I think almost every question is answered that I've had people ask. So I'm going to refer questions specific to the guide. And then if you don't see it, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat as well, and then reach out to me, and then we will make sure that those get answered for you. That's going to be the best source. People have had, like I said, great responses. So there's the website specifically. And so definitely copy that, and under supplemental documents, tag the program guide, the sample application, and your knowledge-based support documentation. Honestly, those will be your key. All right, so we touched on franchises, bankruptcy. Now, if your business, well, okay, if your business unfortunately had to go through a bankruptcy, it can still be eligible if it is under an approved plan of reorganization, either under a Chapter 11, 12, or 13, and it still meets all the program requirements for eligible funding. However, it would not be eligible again if it's permanently closed, if there is a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy, and if it is not under an approved plan of reorganization for a Chapter 7, 11, 12, or 13. Now, permanently closed does not include businesses who temporarily closed their doors due to the state or local restrictions, but are still in operation or have reopened. So you could still apply if you reopened and then closed for 6 months, but not if you ceased operations. So definitely is a difference there. Okay, so there are several funding programs that are out there. Now, how the Paycheck Protection falls into this is, if you received any funds through PPP, you will need to subtract that amount from your funding that will be receiving from the RRF. And you're going to use the same EIN or ITIN or Social Security number that you used with your PPP loan. So you will have to obtain the loan amount and the same EIN that you used with that particular loan. So if you received a PPP loan, use the same EIN because it's going to reference, so these all tie together as far as EINs. Now, if you applied for the first draw PPP loan for multiple locations under one EIN, and then subsequently applied for a second draw PPP loan and used different EINs, then you need to use the EINs for each entity that received the second draw PPP. Now, if you haven't applied for PPP, I would encourage you to do it now before the RRF so that it can be processed and used to take those funds out, or just don't apply at all and just go to the RRF. So definitely need to make sure, if you have one that is pending, you may want to talk to that lender to ask them to withdraw it so that you can only work with one, because you'll have to subtract that PPP from your RRF. And again, the shutter venues, it just opened up Monday. So if you are planning to apply for the shutter venues, then you cannot apply for the PPP because they're both grants. So you cannot apply to both.
There is a question, Irene. The question is, if the PPP loan won't be forgiven, does it still reduce the amount of the RRF?
It will not be forgiven?
It sounds like if for some reason their PPP, that the SBA has decided their loan won't be forgiven, does it still reduce the amount of the RRF?
That is correct. Yes. So the only other thing that you'll need to check as part of the application is that you are certifying that the reason why you're applying for funds is because of the current economic uncertainty, makes funding requests necessary to support ongoing or anticipated operations. So you just have to check the box that this is why you're applying, is because without the funds, your business would not be able to continue operations, or it would have some challenging effects. Okay, fun stuff. What can you use your money for? Honestly, just about anything. So I'm also gonna pull some things from the program guide because it gives more than what is on this slide. So payroll costs, that's everything from, sick leave, healthcare benefits, utility payments, And that is everything from electricity, gas, water, telephone, internet access, or any other utility that is used in the ordinary course of business for which service began before March 11 of 2021. Business maintenance. So that includes maintenance on floors, walls, deck surfaces, furniture, fixtures, equipment, anything that is business expense. Business supplies. That's everything that you're going to use for your cleaning materials. It could be your PPE equipment. Yeah, business supplies. Covered supplier costs. So it is an expenditure made by eligible entity to a supplier of goods for the supply of goods that are essential to the operations and or purchase made in effect anytime before receipt of funds. So supplier costs. Now business operating expenses. This is everything from, fees that you would pay for your business on insurance, marketing, licensing, legal fees, your POS equipment. So this gives a lot of leeway there. So business expense, normal operations for business expenses. It could even include rent, equipment, supplies, inventory, accounting, training, insurance, marketing, legal. Business operating expenses do not include expenses that occur outside of a company's day-to-day activities. And then past due expenses are eligible if they were incurred before February 15, 2020 and ending March 11, 2023. All right, so now it lists construction, but what that is, it's only if you are choosing to do any kind of construction for outdoor seating, then that can be covered. And if you already did it here during the covered period, it can be covered too. So business expense, this includes if you've got business mortgage expenses, both principal and interest, but this does not include prepayment of the principal on that mortgage obligation. And then business debt, that includes principal and interest, but not the prepayment of principal. So rent expenses, if you have a lease agreement, it will include the rent. If you've got credit cards that are for the business, if you want to use it for idle or PPP to pay those off, you can. So it's a business expense. All right, so when do you have to use these funds? So the funds are to be spent on expenses that were incurred between February 15 of 2020 and March 11 of 2023. Now, if the business permanently closes after you receive the funds, then your covered period will end when the business permanently closes or on March 11, 2023, whichever occurs sooner. And if you don't use all of the money by that time frame, then you do have to return it back to the government. Okay, so use of funds after the awarded funds have been exhausted, then what will happen is you will need to provide a detailed expenditure report and certification for that required period back to SBA. And so until you've completed the use of funds assessment, beginning December of this year, you'll be required to provide a self-reported audited data detailing use of the funds through 2023. So we're still working on the guidance for that reporting, and it should be coming out in the next couple of weeks, or I would probably say a couple months. And so I believe you may have been encouraged to open up a separate bank account, like for your PPP and your other federal funds. It's also encouraged that you do the same for RRF, so that you know exactly, here's funds just for this program. I can keep track of them, and then I can only work with this account. So that has, I've also seen that that's been encouraged as well. All right, so fun stuff. How to calculate. There are 3 calculations. Now, everything that I have on this slide, so I'm not going to give you the slide deck. What I'm going to do something better is the link that I gave you in the chat is also going to give you where you can find the program guide, which outlines exactly these calculations, and it gives you examples. So I love it way better. And it's going to give you also the knowledge fund knowledge base, the FAQs. And so I'm encouraging everyone to go to the website and pull up these I keep these documents on my screens every day, and I'm always looking. So any question you may have today, I could almost guarantee that it's probably in the FAQs, in that knowledge base. And this calculation, the calculation also has examples of different scenarios too. So definitely go there. It's very, very helpful. Okay, so the very first one is the easiest. If you were in operation before January 1 of 2019, you're simply going to take your 2019 gross receipts minus 2020, and then take out any federal funding that you've received. PPP, EIDL loan, EIDL advance, state funding programs that were tied to the CARES Act. Even if you receive that $1,000 from the EIDL advance, that's all going to come out, because they're all kind of in the same pot of funding programs. So so basically it just means that you can't double dip. That's why it's asking you to pull everything out. Okay, calculation 2. Now this is if you have partial operations in 2019. So some businesses started in 2020, or you may have started after that February date for 2019. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your average 2019 monthly gross receipts times by 12, and then you subtract your 2020 gross receipts minus any funding programs. You can also, if you have partial operations in 2019, you could choose to use calculations 2 or 3. Now, using calculations 3 will take a little bit longer for processing because there's more verification that needs to take place. So if you did start later, it's best to get the preferred documents, and I'll show you what those are. Okay, calculation 3. This is if you began operations on or between January 1, so last year, through March 10 of 2021 this year. So if you started last year, you can still apply, but what you're going to have to do is, so maybe you haven't opened yet, but you have incurred eligible expenses as of March 11 of 2021. So what you're going to need to do is the total amount spent on your eligible expenses between February 15 of 2020 and March 11 of 2021, and then you minus your 2020 and 2021 gross receipts minus any federal funds that you received. Clear as mud, right? Okay, and then so applicants that begin operations partially in 2020, so you can choose which calculations 2 or 3, but just remember, choosing 3, the documentation will take a little bit longer because we'll need to verify the amounts, and I'll give more information. And honestly, a lot of questions that you may be having or thinking through, go to the program guide and that knowledge base. I've been looking at those 2 documents almost daily, and they answer a lot of questions that people have asked through the email system. Okay, so this comprises what I've been saying as far as what to exclude. Your PPP, if you received a first or second draw, whether it be in 2020 or 2021. The section, SBA section 1112 payments, this is if there was a program like for 6 months, then SBA would make your payments. And so your lender would know if you had an SBA, and these payments then would need to be taken out. So there's the EIDL loan, EIDL advance, the targeted, any other grant funds received through CARES Act, and any state and local business grants that were also provided that you were able to have an opportunity to obtain. And then the Randolph-Shepard Act financial relief. So this is for vending machines, but it also applies to those that have vision impairment. So it's a specific program. All right, so how do you apply? You really encourage to go through your point of sale vendor first. And so SBA actually is partnering with several point of sale vendors. So I know we've gone through Square, we're going through Toast. There were 2 more that were just added. You can also go directly to the website, restaurants.sba.gov. And I just looked at that this morning, and they do have the portal up as far as to get a username and password. So you certainly can get all of this documentation gathered. You can start finding out through your POS. Look on their website. They have a lot of this information accessed. If you're having a challenge or an issue with your POS, we can get that squared away before you submit your application. And you can also, there's a designated help desk specifically just for this, that if you're having questions with the application or on your specific situation, you can call and ask questions here too. But if it's eligibility wise, the program guide, like I said, actually answers quite a few, as does those FAQs. Okay, so what documents? It's the application. It'll be signed and dated, and you can do it digitally on the platform. You'll need that 4506T for your IRS verification, and then that will be uploaded onto the platform as well, and your gross receipts. So your tax returns, if you're a Schedule C, your 1040 Schedule F, if you're a partnership, your 1065, including your K1s. Your bank statements are your 3 most recent bank statements. So if you're submitting in April, it'll be January, February, March. Externally or internally prepared financial statements, such as your income statement or profit and loss, and your point of sale reports, including IRS Form 1099K. So these are the documents that you'll need. So for calculation 1 and 2, now we've listed required documents, but then we've also identified preferred and then accepted. So the accepted may take a little bit longer for the review, and it could take up to 14 days. Now, funding wise, if you have a complete application and your documents are spot on, everything is just check, 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 it's a 14-day turnaround to receive your funds directly into your bank account. So it's imperative to really focus on these applications. So the required documents: application, 4506, 2019 gross receipts from your tax returns, 3 months of most recent bank statements, and your 2020 gross receipts. And then at least one. So the preferred is your filed tax returns and your point of sale report, because your point of sale report gives your banking information and it also gives your sales. So that's preferred, and then having it tied to your tax returns. If you are going to provide your financial statements, then we'll need to have those signed, dated, and certified to the accuracy of it. And that's where that one could take a little bit longer, which is why it's accepted, but it will take a little bit longer for that review. All right, calculation 3. Same documents, so application, 4506, 3 months, 3 most recent tax returns, your 2020-21 gross receipts, and preferred is the 2020 tax returns filed or 2020 tax returns, they're prepared but not yet filed, your 2020 point of sale reports and 2021 point of sale reports. So the eligible expense documentation, the preferred is a CPA comfort letter. If you're not sure what a comfort letter is, it actually is identified in those, in the fund knowledge base, so the FAQs on the website, but it's a letter from your CPA indicating that the information is accurate, that is being provided. So that is part of that documents that will need to be reviewed, but will take longer, but this does provide a faster review because it's being authorized by the CPA. If the applicant submits related expenses to the following categories, so payroll documents, those 941s, outdoor seating expenditures, invoices, payments. I'd mentioned that you could get reimbursed for the construction of that outdoor seating, so just providing that documentation. And then business debt, maybe you need to have a lender loan statements that shows business debt. And accepted, so these are the items that could delay since they need to be verified. Those financial statements, because they'll be signed and dated for verification. And then also those expenses related to the payroll, the outdoor seating, and your business debt.
Irene, we have a question.
Absolutely.
How does a tribal business without tax returns apply?
Aha. I was trying to think if that was on. So it'll be going back to bank statements. Let me see. I was trying to look in those FAQs to see, because I remember it coming up and reading it. Let me see. Well, let's see. How should a tribal business apply? If the tribal business has a tax ID number, apply with that, or a social or EIN. Well, that'll be for the calculation for 2 or 3, because they'll be providing financial statements if they don't file tax returns. But you can still apply. You'll just have to provide your internal and financial statements. Okay. Okay, so going back, if there's any, like, you know, the tap room, breweries, wineries, so providing documentation that you have on-site sales, and at least 33% of those gross receipts can be provided for that. And if there's inns, so if it's like a bed and breakfast, lodging, restaurant kind of a thing, not hotels, but these are inns or that bed and breakfast type. Again, on-site sales of food. You have to show that 33% of those gross receipts. And there's a lot of different questions and definitions that are in that program guide and the RRF knowledge base. Honestly, I keep these up like I said daily, and the questions are very specific. So I encourage you to start there. Here's your help desk. Our office can certainly help with applications. SBDCs can help with applications. And if people have multiple languages, the application, the program guide, all of it are in several languages if people are needing access to that too. So here's some best practices. As I mentioned, to have a complete application without delays. So any applications that are incomplete will be rejected, and the review process will start when you have a completed documentation. And so any delays will jeopardize receiving a award. Leverage resources, so it's not required for you to use your CPAs or your accountants, but it will help obtain those documentations that you'll need to provide. If there are any corrections, SBA won't be able to make those corrections on your behalf by saying, oh, calling us up, oh, hey, sorry, I actually used the wrong numbers or I transposed them. You'll need to call the help center desk, or if you're already in the system, then if we see something, we're going to send it back to you. You'll fix it, you'll send it back. So that actually delays the processing anytime it has to go back and forth. Because again, if we're trying to get these out within 14 days, so the faster we get them out, the more complete submissions need to happen. And then again, applicants who still intend to apply for PPP, so all of our applicants are advised to complete their PPP applications in advance of RRF application. So if you're thinking about it, get it done first, get it processed, because that'll have to come out. So again, kind of a business decision there. Pilot period, that's what we're doing this week. Our pilot period is, we've randomly selected from PPP borrowers who've self-identified as members of those RRF priority groups. They're not going to receive funds, but we are doing the pilot to see how the portal works and how the processing works through all that. And when it does open, there'll be a 21-day priority period. Now, if you are not part of the priority group, that's okay. You can still submit your application. It will just sit until the priority group has been processed. And the applications will be looked at for businesses that are owned by women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged applicants. And then on the 22nd day, then the rest of the applications will be processed until funds are exhausted. Now, we've also heard talk that this particular industry has been greatly hurt, and Congress may give more funds. That isn't anything that we've heard. So if you're thinking about applying, I would encourage you just to get your application in, even during that priority period, because then it'll at least be in the system, and then they'll start pushing them through. So what are the priority groups? You have to at least be 51% owned and managed, and daily business operations of the applicant are controlled by women, veterans, and then socially disadvantaged. And you are going to be self-certifying that on the application that you meet those eligibility requirements. So even if you don't, that just means that you're not in the priority group. Like I said, you still can apply now. So for example, if an applicant has 5 owners, everyone has 20%, 2 are veterans, 1 is socially and economically disadvantaged, they meet that 51% owned by a priority group. So those priority groups are those that fall within the presumed groups of Black American, Hispanic, Native, Asian, and the economically is already presumed to accompany those groups, because they have not had the same ability to compete so this is a standard. So if you're familiar with our contracting program, it's the exact same that we utilize for that as well. Now, if you are considering reorganizing just to qualify for the priority period, then those will be disqualified. And so those are going to go pretty quick within those 3 weeks, but then as long as your application is in the system. So definitely encourage you just to submit. So this just addresses that there's $5 billion in this program, and there's a lot of restaurants that fall within these categories. And so we're hoping Congress will give more money to fulfill the need. And that sums it up. So I am going to throw into the chat And so you've got the questions, or you've got the website right there. And so that would be my first place to go to, is the website. And you are going to look for the program guide, a sample application, and the knowledge-based support documentation, those three things. And then you'll be golden.
There's a question, do you know when the application process will start?
So, like I said, this is our pilot week. I read an article and that said April 30th is when they would open up the portal for applications for people to submit, but nothing will be processed until May 3rd. So even if that is a, so I haven't heard anything yet. And so I am excited to be part of the application processing for the RRF. Yay! So hopefully we'll get to know more, but they haven't told us anything. But we just know that this is the portal week. There's been rumors of April 30th. And I saw on the website today that there is now a block for user ID and password. And so I don't believe if people go on there now that it will allow them, it could allow them to get a username and password, but not go further. But I would encourage you to start gathering your documentation, get any of the information that would be needed for the application. And like I said, pull off the sample, the guide, and those FAQs. That'll be very, very helpful. And I think she just, okay, yep. So like I said, honestly, the slides don't do justice more than the program guide does. If you were to go to the program guide, it gives you examples. Some of the examples that I was reading came from the program guide. And that's where I would go first. Okay. Oh, and, restaurant, let me see. Let me throw that in there for you. Okay. So this link that I'm putting in now, that is the link to the actual portal. And so right now it is saying that the RR application portal is currently operating under an invite only. So the pilot period. So it's just saying pilot period. If you already have login credentials and have already started a restaurant, you can check the status. So you can create a username and password. So when the time comes, this is the link where you go for the portal. The first link that I gave you is to the RRF website, which is on SBA's website. That's the link to the actual RRF, where you'll find the program guide, sample application, and that knowledge-based document. I'm going to put into the chat those three. And those are the three that I would encourage you to, to get familiarized with. A lot of your questions will be answered there. And if you don't see your question there, I'm going to put my information in the chat, and then you can reach out to me. If you have something specific. I'm pretty excited about this program because it's really going to be helping businesses with those operating funds. And the portal actually is very user friendly. And it does the calculation for you once you plug in your information. And it's going to give you, like, let's say there's 6 steps. When you go in, it'll tell you exactly where you're at. And it'll tell you what you still need to do. And if there's any communication, there's an email correspondence. So you'll see everything that SBA is asking you for in case you miss something. So this one is laid out really, really good. So did this answer everyone's questions? For just to get the information that you need to start, know where to find it. And then if you have something specific to yours, look in that look in the knowledge-based support documentation, the FAQs. If you don't see it in there, send me an email.
I think you still need to put your email
Oh.
in the chat.
Whoops, I was so close. Okay. Anything else I can help with? I know there's a lot of information for today, so process it and reach out for anything you may have. But like I said, I think you get a lot of questions answered in 1, 2, and 3 on the website. And then that call center support dedicated to just RRF and anything specific with your application. But like I said, you can go into the portal when it starts and see where it's at. It's just if you have eligibility questions, or if you need to do something with you can't do a POS or your own computer, then they'll do it over the phone application.
Irene, thank you so much. I also put in the chat the phone number for the Small Business Development Center here at Eastern, and we'll also help you in any way that we can. And we always pass along information that Irene sends just right after we receive it. So we'll do our best to keep you updated as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Like I said,
Thank you.
just a call or an email away.
Everyone have a great day. Thank you for joining.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.